Today on Rock and Blues Review, we are welcoming someone who is the best ambassador to music today, and that's Dave Rave. His passion, talent, and history give him a unique perspective and influence on the world of rock and roll. So welcome, Dave.
I'm glad to be here, and thank you for that kind introduction. I guess ambassador is a good word. I never think of it that way, but it's
Well,
just what you do as a musician. You go out and you play, and you make people happy.
yeah, and that has occurred to me several times watching you because I don't think you fit any particular mold of what people would expect or see from you.
Right.
For those of
Go ahead.
people who don't know, Dave's an integral member with Teenage Head and a founding member of the Shakers and the Dave
Yeah.
Rave Group and the Dave Rave Conspiracy and the Midnight Men. With so many irons in the fire, we should be calling your next band the Blacksmiths.
Thank you.
So it's great to talk to you. You're always fun to watch. And, just a second ago, we touched on your ambassadorship. And because every time I see you, I mean, you cross genres, punk, early rock and roll, rockabilly, surf, blues.
Yeah.
You touch them all and you do it so well. And you cross genres so seamlessly that I think you draw everyone in.
Well, thank you. Well,
And,
I think Bob, it was the era we come from. Like I'm born in '57, so 1957 was an interesting year because rock and roll was just starting. So that by the time I was like maybe like 12, I'd heard so much music because we grew up when it was still big band, still like the Sinatra era, and then the beginning of like you had the early rock and roll Elvis and that, and then you eventually had the British invasion. So many things into the psychedelic era, into the era of Cream and heavy rock. So by the time I was like 12, and I think most people our generation would be the same, we really struck gold. We got to hear every kind of music in the whole century. You know what I'm saying?
oh, yeah.
So I think that's why it's so natural. Part of it's geographical, and part of it is just where you are in the spectrum of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, but I think, like I said, I remember talking to you a few years ago before you did your first uh, Blues Etc. gig with Steve Grisbrook, and
Yeah.
you were a little bit nervous about the blues
Yeah.
label, but but
Yeah.
but now that you've been there so many times and you're almost a regular, you the blues based rock and roll like the Rolling Stones fits in
Yeah.
so nicely.
Yeah. Well, that's really the blues was underneath it all was I always call it like if you look at you're making a piece of a cake, it's or a recipe of anything, it's the first layer. And even I remember when I was a kid, like my mom, who even though she say like well like the big band and jazz era, she loved blues too. That was part of that era. So it's in the lining of what I do, but I've never formally have just played blues the way guys like that era have. But it's more part of me because I always thought it's really hard music to play, like country music. You have to country and western. You have it's got you have to play it, and you can't fake it. It seems easy to play because it's, as they say, so-called three chords, but I don't believe that at all. It's amazing music, and I love it. So it's in the base of what I do.
Yeah. Well, I've always said that anything that's easy to do is really hard to be great at because, yeah, how do you rise above the 90% who are doing it and become that 10%? All right. So I just watched the documentary, Picture My Face, Story of Teenage Head. What did you think of the movie?
You know what? At first, I was scared to watch it because it's your own life, and you don't want to face the truth sometimes of your own life. It's easier to watch somebody else's life. To be honest, I can watch a documentary on Buddy Holly Muddy Waters or anybody, but to watch your own, it was really hard at first. I'll be honest with you. It took me quite a few. When it first was played, it was the same night of the American election, the first year that what do you call one? Joe Biden one. It was during the pandemic, and I watched it on TVO. And I have to be honest, I would stop, go back to get out of it, then I'd come back to it, like I almost like was peeking at it. But then about 2 years, about over a year ago, I came home from actually a Teenage Head gig in Sault Ste. Marie. I was really tired, and I flipped through the channel. It was on TVO, and I watched for the first time the whole thing. And I have to say, I think we did good for Gordy. I think that Gord Lewis was such a great musician and such a great innovator of Canadian rock that in the long run, I think we did a nice tribute to him. He was suffering mentally in the end, but that's not his fault. That's just human life. And Steve and all of us, I think, made Gord feel comfortable to close the rest of his life, raising the Teenage Head flag high. And it was great to see the early days too, with heat wave days and all those great, hear those early stories. So I think in the long run, now I really appreciate it. It took me a long time to accept it, like or watch it. It was scary, you know.
Right. And I get that. But, and I was going to mention to you, if you didn't already, aside from the music, I think that part about Gord Lewis was really important because I don't think I've ever seen a movie, documentary, whatever, that captured his pain so well. Like,
Yeah.
I think it will give people an understanding that they never had before.
Yes. Well, for some people, it was really disappointing because they just want to hear the fun memories of Teenage Head. Like they go to a bar and it's just such fun music. Even though it was punk, the Teenage Head always rose above the punk level in terms of fun and entertainment. So they always entertained. Frank was a hilarious guy, and they were a great band musically. So the music was fun, and it was surf rock in it, So I think for some people, they want to see more of that. But in the long run, I think it really was even something deeper. And I'm glad it was. I'm glad it was because it did show the layers of doing the thing that we do. It comes at a cost. And I always say, like the guys that I played with, I love them. And we just lost Jack Pedler, another member of Gina Ched. And I wish I went to his memorial party after I played last week in with you, and it comes with a cost, but in the long run, it's good to hear for people to see to see the whole story of what makes this thing that we do happen.
Right. It gives an understanding of, like you said, the cost, and people probably don't want to
Yeah.
think about it, but it's important.
But
But
we
I,
rose above it, and we made it. And that final show at the stadium, which is every Hamiltonian's dream. And I think because Labor Day Classic between Toronto and Hamilton is the event of the year in Hamilton, right?
right,
And us to play it, it was a dream come true. Like and what a nice thing for Gord that was Tanched's last gig with Gord. What a nice thing to have for that lad to go out on the top that way.
right. But the movie did have a lot of positives, like you mentioned, and
Yeah,
I think one of the big ones was seeing Marky Ramone and Rob Baker of Tragically Hip saying
yeah,
how much effect Teenage had on them. You know,
yeah.
that was really cool to hear, and I'm sure you were probably happy to hear those comments.
Amazing. Yeah. Teenage Head is funny. Today I was in the store, and the guy who runs the store is a fellow musician, of course. Is a music store, and he said everybody came in the store. Everybody who comes in the store knows you, like all the different. Because it's in Oakville, and all the different musicians. And I think it's because Teenage Head was always down to earth, and we were always like the people's band, I think it's really true that we really did touch people in a genuine way because we played the whole country and we talked to everybody from sea to sea. And never mind, I mean, influencing like the Tragically Hip were a young band at the time and they were still doing covers and they looked at Teenage Head as a light to their career. And so I'm think that's absolutely honored. I'm honored by that. And you know what? They've been total gentlemen about it. I'm glad they took it to where they went to. They were a great band and a great bunch of guys. And to this day, Gord Sinclair and Bobby are out there, and the rest of the band are still great guys. They were humble about their relationship with us. What more respect can somebody say, right?
Yeah, it was great.
That's what you do in your career, right?
Right. Yeah, it was great. And I know you're not going to take uh, a, a ton of credit, but a lot of that has to do with you because your forte is joyful performances. And I don't think that necessarily fits the punk image of the day.
No.
And
Well, the thing about punk, it went through a lot of different versions of punk. See, when in the 76, like 75, 76, when Gordy and I were going to high school, um, we liked a certain energy of rock and roll. I did and he did. And I think that the bands like the Ramones, Blondie, um, and the bands from that era, they were fun bands. And they were, and then as it moved punk into the 80s, it got a little more political, a little more aggressive. It became that which is fine. It's fine. It's good. But the original, if you listen even to the Ramones, it's Blitzkrieg Bop is a fun song. Hey, ho, and let's go. And Teenage Heads, let's shake. It was more exuberant music, I think, and it had come from an era when people got more like it was more like which again great music, but more like Pink Floyd, like darker music, like music of the mid 70s was very technical, and we were just saying, hey, let's have a little fun as rock and roll again. And that was punk at the time. Do you know what I mean?
right. And the one thing I noticed with seeing you so often lately is, and again, I think it had to do a lot of the visuals at the time because the visual stage performance is so much a very important part of the punk band because it's not just the music, it's that whole
Yeah,
presentation which
yeah,
put a whole new spin on it. But when I see you now and we mentioned some of the stuff you've done, the way you capture old time rock and roll
right.
and I didn't get that at the time. I'm seeing that now going, oh, this is rock and roll. And the movie actually mentioned, I think Marky Ramone mentioned how you guys captured that 50s rock and roll
Yeah,
feel.
yeah. Yeah. You see, and it's an interesting thing because we had good friends of ours who were really great specialists on rock and roll music. And it was hard to find that kind of music as the 60s went into the 70s. And as the mid 70s, this accident happened where groups like Buddy Holly, because we did have Happy Days in the late 60s, early 70s, but that was still more rock and roll, not rockabilly and that kind of music. But we were lucky because in the mid 70s, we had a friend, like example, one guy who we always credit was called Slash Booze, and he would bring Gene Vincent records and Eddie Cochran and all these guys, even Buddy Holly. And the punks really loved the energy of that music. And at that period of time, guys like Robert Gordon and eventually to the Stray Cats, they embraced the rockabilly in full form. But we blended rockabilly in with the punk rock in the surf rock. You know what I mean? It was a new confection. Like so, you're combining like Eddie Cochran, something else, into Wild One, which was rock and roll, straight Jerry Lewis, but also into surf rock too. Like Let's Go to Hawaii. So it was a real combination of all three, and they were all. Yeah, I call it if you're going to put a drug more like pep pills, as opposed to the marijuana psychedelic. You know what I mean? Which is more like tripping.
Yeah.
tripping. And we were like, okay, no, no, no. We're frothing at the mouth and playing and not even time for a slow song.
Right.
Let's
Right.
rock.
Right. Right.
That's where that came from.
Right. But back then in the early days, what was it like? You guys got the hair, the makeup, the lipstick, the clothing,
Yeah,
and you're in the Hammer. You're in the Steel Town. What was the
not
dynamic
good.
like?
It didn't go over well. Basketball teams would try to beat the band up, everything. You know what I mean? It didn't go over well in the beginning. Glam rock, in retrospect, was a more of a British thing. Americans picked up on it and Canadians, but maybe Alice Cooper, Bowie got accepted. Mark Bolan was never, T-Rex was big, but never as big as in England. But yeah, so glam rock was a hard thing for North Americans to pick. Britain, it was easy, like they don't mind, even though you could get beat up in England, trust me. but the music, like glam rock in England, was as big as the Beatles. You know what I mean? In America, it was just in the music. And
Right.
and the Coop became sort of the biggest. We loved Alice Cooper, loved him. And then Bowie came along, loved Bowie. But Bowie was, it took a while for the regular people to like him. He was a little too effeminate, right? But
Right.
then when he did finally connect, wow. And that was Teenage Heads. The roots of punk is really glam rock in a lot of ways. That kind of music, Kiss and all that music,
Yeah.
along with the music like, Badfinger and some of the power pop of the 70s through the Raspberries and that. But
Yeah.
that was sort of the music, like, and then went by 76, that music got into a little more. Ramones and those guys all picked it up.
Right. Oh, I love Slade.
Oh, Slade were in it. Love Slade. Love Slade.
Yeah. Now,
I'm all crazy now.
yeah. But you mentioned the UK and Hamilton the Hammer. There
Yeah,
seems to be that happening in those working class cities. Dublin, the
yeah,
Boomtown Rats.
yeah,
London with the Sex Pistols and the Clash, and even in Queens with the Ramones. That working blue collar
yeah,
worker. There was an affinity for the music,
yeah.
and
Yeah, that's it. And underneath it all, we always, all of us in the band, sort of loved the Stones. They always were around. They were like the drawing card because they continued changing. And even in the 70s, they added a little glam rock to their sound. And then in the 70s, 60s, as the 70s went into the later 70s, they did Some Girls and all that. So we always, they were sort of the glue that brought the 60s into the 70s. That was the consistency of the music. So we like that too, like Stevie would always put, Miss You album on. That was all in there too. So it was, and actually the early Who, people like the energy, the jam and that, because the early Who had like that energy. And the later Who was more proggy, right? And people like except Quadrophenia. That was a big movie in the punk days because that movie really, really touched a lot of people because it was the British, the mods and rockers stuff.
do you think some of the rebellion came from a fear of being stuck in a steel mill?
Yeah. And now I wish I didn't rebel because those guys now have done really well.
Oh, oh,
They're all, but no, yeah, and they're all my great friends. They've all like, wow. No, you know what? You're absolutely right. That was it. Being in Hamilton, we didn't want to be. We knew that that's our only choice after we go to Stelco or one of those companies, and we didn't want to do that. And music was lucky enough that we were successful young enough that we didn't have to go that route. So I think it was a little more with a word called anxiety. We didn't come from an arty city. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have that, but we didn't have those examples neither, because everybody here was very working class, and really beautiful people. Like all our folks were just great, beautiful people who are going, be careful, son. You hope, please, what are you gonna, try to make some money, like they were encouraging, but they couldn't give any more advice than that.
right, right. Well, what do you think is the key to your longevity and optimism? Because, the movie showed some of the downside, showed you in some quiet introspection where,
Yeah.
it's not all fun and games. So how did you avoid the pitfalls?
Well, you know what? It's that old, I think maybe that's what you call that working class attitude. It's like pick yourself up and start again. And I always had that when things were really wrong in your life, accept it and don't walk away from it. Just look it in the eye and say, okay, this is where I'm standing right now. Pick yourself up. It's that line, like the great song, that reggae song. Going to pick yourself up, dust myself off, and start all over again. And in '89, when I knew that Teenage Head we had sort of gone as far as we could at that point. When New York came along, I said, okay, I'm going to go to New York. And I told Gordy, I got to leave the story right now. These guys are going to keep going. Or maybe you want to end the story too, but he wanted to keep going with the story, the Teenage Head story. But I knew I had to go to New York, try something new. That's always been my attitude. Try something new. Don't be afraid of youth. Don't be afraid of what younger people are doing. Listen to them and pay attention to what they're saying. And because they're going to tell you something that you don't like, even though you have all this experience and you
Right,
can help, they can help you too. And if
right.
you can do that mutual thing, I always give a lot of young people advice and they love it. But I don't mind getting advice from them too. Like they almost help you get to where you gotta go. So I think it's a combination of that. Like don't get down. It can happen and pick yourself up, start again. And when I was finished in New York, I came back to Canada, and I was happy to come back to Canada. And 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 when Teenage Head invited me back to the band, I said yes, yeah, okay. Let's just pick up where we left off, and don't get. And you know what? A lot of people in this world um, don't have the breaks that we had in our life. They are still just working wherever they started back when they were 20. They didn't have that adventure, but yet they're still here. So appreciate what happened to you and everybody gets ripped off. Somebody probably invented the wheel way back. They're not getting royalties, right? 22,000 years later, it can happen, so don't take it personal. Things happen and move on.
I'm reading Tom Wilson's book, Beautiful Scars. He mentioned he mentions you several times. And I think one of the greatest things he said was he really had praise for you. And he said Dave DeRoche and Rick Andrew were busy writing amazing songs and putting together the Shakers, a band that would flatten all bands that got in their way. What do you think of that?
Well, that's awful kind to say that, but I know what you mean. I know what he means because in music and in business and in art, uh, you need a forum to get in, like a window. Now, like example, like in 1977, Tom Wilson was playing acoustic music, which he's back doing now, but he was playing acoustic music and he wanted to be like the folk songwriters that were going around in Canada and the United States, like John Prine, you name it, right? And we were playing, because we were songwriters, we were playing in the coffee houses because that was a chance. The coffee houses was an original form and we wanted to play that. Bars only wanted covers. So, which is fine. And so we were doing both. So when Teenage Head came along, for Tom Wilson to enter the punk world, that was too far away from him to get in at that point. Because I had played with Teenage Head all along, I'd known the music and played on the records, and Gordy and Nick and Steve helped us on our records. I was closer to the source of where he would need to go. So I think when we opened the door and when we did the Shakers, he saw that as an example. Hey, now I can join the party. I call it join the party. And that happens in every field, right? It happened in the 60s, happened in the 70s. So when we, for example, like when we saw the Ramones and Blondie and those groups, I said, there's an entrance for for us to come in, right? I thought at that point there was no entrance. And when I saw Dave Edmunds, Nick Lowe, I said, oh, now the Shakers can join in because the Shakers couldn't really join in with the Ramones. That was Teenage Head Turf. So
Right.
when teenage, and there was a lot of British bands in called the pub rock. So it was Elvis Costello, all those bands, Squeeze. So it allowed the Shakers in. And the Shakers, once we were in and playing and getting our success, it allowed Tom to start his band, the Florida Raisins, which was a really nice pub rock kind of band. And he did that till the end of the 80s. And then eventually, when that was ending, he got in a junk house and started a whole other thing. But
Right.
so I think we helped him enter into this new world from the folk world.
Yeah. Well, he suggested that you took the punk direction because the folkies didn't understand you.
Well, yeah, also because I love that music. I didn't mind folk music, but we knew we could never do it as good as those guys. Those guys were all older guys and they were technically proficient in that field. And we were just a little more raw, a little more punkier, and a little more poppier than those guys. So punk rock was just perfect for us because when we heard Nick Lowe, we went, "Oh my God, that's us," you know. But and I love the early Britpop, like which means like the Stones and the Animals and the Beatles and
Mhm.
all those bands. I love those bands. So when I heard Nickel and that music, I went, "Oh, that's got the energy of those bands, the Kinks and that," and it gave us a way in. So it was punky.
Right.
It was fun. But yeah, we ended that. We used that thing. Yeah.
I think the nicest thing he said, or to me, the most impressive thing he said about you, he said, Dave Rave and Tim Gibbons were dreamers, and their music made every fiber of my being come alive. I just thought that was awesome. And
That's great.
I have to say, we still see that in you when these shows you put on. Nobody's got more
Thank you.
energy than you.
Thank you. Well, you know what? I think we were playing really inspired music, and we really did feel it. And we it was a great time. It was freedom, and we were discovering ourselves. And Teenage Head being successful was like everything really was helpful because it gave us they and having played with Frankie and Gordy and Steve, they let us enter their world and we had so much fun together. We had so many fun nights together playing music, laughing and playing the arenas and all that. I think I've carried that on, to be honest with you. I've carried that energy on, from that period of time. I always have, it's been
Yeah,
in me.
yeah, I think you have for sure.
Thank you.
Um, he had some high praise for Gord Lewis too. He said when he turned up the Marshall amp, the sound that came out was nothing north, was like nothing north of Johnny Ramone.
Yeah, well, that's true because of my memory. You see, in 1975 and 76, Gord, and I can say this with all honesty, he was a lone soldier and the style that he wanted to play when he heard Alice Cooper it changed him and then he really got into the Stooges and then he heard the Dolls and then he heard all those glam rock bands like Kiss and everybody and then I think when it all tied together when he heard the Ramones and he went I'm on the right highway and he with Johnny Ramone, created a new sound that was his own. The difference between Johnny and, say, Gordy was that Johnny couldn't play the leads that Gordy could play. Gordy was an astounding lead player. He played with so much, like he combined Johnny Thunder's, all those guitar players, Alice Cooper's guitar players, and into this amazing style that to this day sends shivers down my bones. He played so emotionally and beautifully and with heart and dexterity and clarity. Every one of his leads you remember. Like you can hum the leads in Let's Shake. You can hum and everything he did for me separately, even outside of Teenage Head. He was nothing short but spectacular. I love him as a player. He was humble about it too. He was always trying to learn, and played with a lot of heart, so much heart.
All right. Now, Tom also talks about being at a kitchen party with you, Tim Gibbons, and Daniel Lanois.
Okay.
That must have been amazing.
Yeah.
Those,
Well,
those events just don't happen to everybody. You,
well, I'll be honest with you too. What happened is that in Hamilton, we had this little studio called Grand Avenue. And Grand Avenue was Bob and his brother Dan, the two of them together. And they were originally up at his mom's house up in Ancaster, and then they moved downtown. And when it was just coming to the time when I was wanting to do in the studio work, I would have friends invite me to down because I'm a good at singing harmonies. Like they would bring me to the studio to sing harmonies on the records, and Danny was engineering. So me and him built a relationship together, with him engineering and me singing harmonies. And I was also very good at memorizing tunes. So in the days of the 70s, they would want what they called no leakage. Explain that to the lay people. I mean, like no sounds on each mic that come from each other instrument. So it's a very clean sound. So I would do the vocals so the band could have the cleanest sounds ever. No leakage from each microphone. And so, yeah, so me and Dan built a great relationship together. We spent over the years. And then in 79, when it came to, I really wanted Teenage Head to come to play there. And in the industry at that time wouldn't allow a band from Hamilton to record in Hamilton. They had to do it in Toronto. But eventually we talked them into it. And they came to Hamilton, Teenage Head, and recorded a cool single, a version of Top Down. And then but one day I remember that went really well. So one day I went to Dan, is it okay if I bring the guys I've been working with, the Shakers, and record with you? And he said, sure. And we had a great time together. And we did 3 singles and 2 albums together. It was really a pleasure.
yeah. Well, he mentioned when he was trying to he recorded a Little Sister because he wanted a Hamilton sound. And again,
Yeah.
Lanois. So Daniel Lanois, again, giving great tribute to you, saying it reminded him of Hamilton like Teenage Head and Dave Rave.
Well, you know what, Dan, I think he taught us a lot, and we taught him a lot too. So that when he went off to do the U2 and those groups, he had all experience of us nut bars telling him to do all these crazy things because we were always asking him to do things that he didn't want to do. But then when he would try him out, he'd go, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Because he was still really from the 70s generation of recording, like a very close mic and we'd always be asking him things. I said, how come we can't get this sound? How come we can't get this sound? What is this sound? And so we were pestilent with him. But we had a lot of fun. He was a great guy to work with. I loved him, and then brother Bob. The two of them. Without those two guys, how lucky? As you said, how lucky can we be, right? We had 2 of the coolest guys in the music industry before they really were the big guys. They were just one of our team, right?
I have a selfish question for you.
Okay.
I really liked Alex Chilton, and you worked with him. What was he like?
Yeah. You know what? Alex was a persnickety guy, and he was a what's the word called? He was a man of opposites. Like if something was going really good, he'd want to go the other way. Now, like if he did a rock record, he'd want to do a jazz record after that. He was. I remember I saw him just after 9/11. He'd played in New York, and everything was so patriotic. Flags were everywhere. And Alex was a Memphis boy, so he's a Southerner, and he was living in New Orleans. And I remember he looked back at this flag behind him. He goes, "Where are we in Nazi Germany? Let's take that flag down." And so I go, "Oh, what a rebel!" Right? So he's taking the flag down when everybody was like totally, like John, USA, USA. I love that about him. And so in the studio, he was an amazing guy, and he I met him a few times over the years. He when he reunited Big Star, I know he got one of my records, and he told me, which is big compliment. He goes, "I sort of like your record."
Yeah.
Everybody goes, he never says that. It surprised me. I liked it. And the other time I remember I was with Lanois staying at his place in New Orleans. And I got into this really thing where I was really liking these cans. They were like a honey, they're called Bit of Honey. And at 11 o'clock at night, I was getting a bit of honey rush. So I went walking over to the local grocery store around the corner, the bodega from his place. Alex was coming in on his bike because he was living in New Orleans. We both greet each other. Hey, Alex, what do you know? I said, I'm here staying at Dan's. What are you doing? And we both ready to go in, and a robbery started happening. And the guy started shooting guns off. And so we both went, see you later. He ran the other way on his bike. I went, oh, what a place to meet. Of course, it's Alex Chilton. There's going to be, fireworks. But he was tremendous, tremendous. What a talent. I remember his last day alive. We were in Austin, Texas, at the South by Southwest. And the day before, I went to the Memphis booth. Because they each at the South by Southwest, there's all these booths of different. So I went there, and Jody Stevens, his drummer, was behind the counter. And I went to Jody. Alex can't wait for tomorrow, knowing sarcastically he hated that kind of stuff. And then Jody laughed. He goes, yeah, pulling teeth to get, Alex to come here, And I said, well, I can't wait to see you guys. Can't wait. Anyhow, that morning I wake up and CNN has their banner. And I saw R.I.P. Alex Chilton. And I went, no,
Yeah.
no, he's supposed to play tonight. No, I just talked to Jody yesterday about him. It broke my heart because he was such an amazing guy,
Well, we got to do part 2 because we are almost out of time here. So I will just mention that you do come down here to play with Steve Grisbrook and Bruce Etc. and Jimmy Casson out at Iggy's, and people can catch you there. Should keep an eye on you. I want to thank you so much for doing this, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Bob, I should let you also know that I'm going to be playing with Teenage Head at that in October at the new Light of Day show they're going to be doing. That's going to be coming up in October. We'll keep you posted on that. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Okay. God bless.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Bob. Take care.